Imposter syndrome. I'm sure you have heard of this term before. But what is it? What is imposter syndrome? Imposter feelings are self-sabotaging behavior which involves self-doubt, uncertainty about our talents and abilities, as well as a sense of unworthiness that doesn't align with what other people think, feel, or say about us. Basically, imposter syndrome is your assumptions versus your reality. When it comes to your capabilities, you always think or believe that others are more knowledgeable, others are more skilled or more capable than you are. But the reality is that you are knowledgeable, you are skilled, you are capable than them, or at least at the same level as they are. That is what imposter syndrome is all about. Now, let's look at how imposter syndrome manifests in us. There are actually so many ways in which imposter syndrome can show up or can manifest in us, such as berating your own performance, attributing your achievement to external factors, unable to rate your skills, fear of not living up to expectations, seeking validation from others, negative self-talks, and so many more. So now that we know what imposter syndrome is and how it manifests in us, let's look at imposter syndrome in the context of public speaking. How does it affect us as public speakers? When it comes to public speaking, imposter syndrome is real because there's always a negative version of yourself, the second you right behind you, and that inner voice that is coming through to sabotage your speaking. These two always team up to confuse you and start sabotaging your speaking. Then you will end up having negative thoughts about yourself. To a certain extent, you will end up asking yourself unwelcome and funny questions such as, who am I to think that I could do this? Or maybe they will ask a question that I can't answer, or that other presenters are more knowledgeable and able to deliver this talk eloquently than you are. Maybe people will find out that you are a fraud. You are just lucky. You know nothing about this topic at all. Sometimes you might even end up asking yourself, who am I to think that I can actually stand right in front of this lot of people like this and say something? I can't do this. Those are some of self-sabotaging behavior that we end up having, and then it affects our speaking. We end up giving up or making a lot of mistakes, and then we might never want to speak ever again in our lives. Now, what are the causes of imposter syndrome? In most cases, imposter syndrome shows up when we focus on things that we don't have or can't do than things that we have and can do. For example, if you are speaking, you want to employ some tactics and techniques that you do not have or that you do not know about just yet. You want to copy other people. At the end of the day, you end up making mistakes, and then imposter syndrome will start kicking in. So we need to avoid doing that when we are speaking. Imposter syndrome can also show up as a result of the energy of the audience, that overwhelming sense of being judged. You feel like, no, they are looking at me. Maybe they are thinking that I'm not what, or I will not be able. They have so much expectation about this topic from me and all that. Another causes of imposter syndrome is comparing ourselves to other speakers. Comparison is very dangerous. When you compare yourself to other speakers, imposter syndrome will even kick in more because you would want your speech to be the same as that of the most experienced speakers. You want your speech to be like that of the Obamas, the Oprahs, and so forth. But you are just a novice speaker. You are just starting out. Another way or another causes of imposter syndrome is assumptions that we have. For example, assuming that someone else must be in an expert category to hold such kind of title. It's already a sabotaging fact on its own, because you will be rating yourself thinking that because that person is in that position, they are more knowledgeable, they can speak better than you are, and so forth. Then you will end up self-sabotaging, and eventually things might go wrong. So we need also not to have such assumptions when we are speaking. We should just speak. We should just talk. They might be knowledgeable, but not more than you are. Or they might be knowledgeable, but in some areas. Another causes of imposter syndrome in us is perfectionism or over-preparing. When you are this kind of person who want everything to be perfect all the time, you want to be over prepared for every speech you are going to give, then you are likely to have imposter syndrome kicking in, because you would want to speak exactly the way you practice. You want to probably remember sentence by sentence as to how you prepared your speech and so on. Then imposter syndrome will even kick in more and more. So we need to prepare just as long as we are able to remember our speeches or know what to say by heart, at least as long as we know what comes first, what goes next, and what we end with. That is the most important. We should avoid over preparing. Unpreparedness can also be one of the causes of imposter syndrome. You see, when you are not ready, when you don't know what to say, when you don't have your points in order, you are less likely to succeed with your speech. And that is when imposter syndrome kick in the more, because the less prepared you are, the less confident you will be. The more prepared you are, the more confident you are going to be. We need to be prepared when we are giving our speeches at all costs. Now let's look at the strategies on how to manage our imposter. First of all, believe that everyone feels like an imposter sometimes, and that's okay. Then the first point or the first strategy to employ is to call yourself an expert. Yes, call yourself an expert. Because if you feel like an imposter, if you feel like a fraud, working harder in quest to improve or to perfect your speaking might not help to change your self-image. So the first thing you should do if you want to be seen as a good speaker is to start calling yourself an expert. You shouldn't wait around for other people to call you an expert. It starts with you. Call yourself an expert. Then everything will start flowing. You see, this is actually the strategy I employed when I started speaking. I really felt like an imposter. At some point in time, I felt like giving up, until that day that I decided that I am set to become a speaker, and that speaker I should become. I started calling myself an expert. I started dressing up like that expert. I even started walking like that expert, behaving like that expert, until I really realized that I'm improving, I'm getting there. So calling yourself an expert is the starting point. The second strategy is to keep telling yourself that you are not an imposter. Talk to yourself, meditate about this. Talk to your inner self every now and then, telling yourself that you are not an imposter. Then immediately your mind will register that you are actually not an imposter. This sounds very funny, but it really works. Just try it. You can as well manage your imposter by telling yourself that you can, other than telling yourself that you can't. Another way is to stop comparing yourself to others. I've already mentioned this. Stop comparing yourself to others. Challenge your negative self-talks. Rephrase your negative self-talks into positive self-talks. Then imposter syndrome will disappear from your life. The more you like yourself, the more you talk positively about yourself, the more you think positively about yourself, imposter syndrome will start disappearing. Another way to manage imposter syndrome is to seek support from others. It can be your mentor, it can be a coach, you can join support groups, and so on. At the end of the day, you will end up having that feeling of having a backup. You will be feeling like you are really backed up by others. And this will also help you gain a new perspective, learning new skills, and build your confidence. Another way we can put an end to imposter syndrome is by believing that the audience is our friends. In most cases, when we speak, we feel like the audience is our enemies. But in actual fact, the audience is your friend. They are actually rooting for you when you are speaking. They want you to win, and they want you to meet their needs and expectations. That's why they turned out in numbers to come and listen to you. So they really want you to achieve your goals. They want you to succeed with your speech. That's why we need to understand and have it at the back of our mind that they are actually our friends and not our enemies, and they are not wishing downfall or failure with our speeches. Another strategy we can manage imposter syndrome is by taking advantage of speaking opportunities. In most cases, we have a tendency of shying away from the spotlight of speaking. When you are given a task or when you are given a presentation, expected to speak, you always want to run away. You want to turn down the opportunity. This is the most important time you need to do away with imposter syndrome. So you need to make use of each and every opportunity you are given. Speak as much as you can, speak as many times as you can. Then as time goes, imposter syndrome will keep disappearing bit by bit until you can at least speak with very minimal of imposter syndrome. I don't really like using the word overcoming because you can't overcome imposter syndrome. You can only manage it. It will always pop up because at some point in time, it's what helps us to move on, it's what helps us to achieve and to succeed. If we don't have imposter syndrome, then it's more like we are not thinking, we are not alive. So you can only manage it. Another strategy we can manage imposter syndrome is by challenging our doubts. Challenge your doubts. For example, if you are speaking and imposter syndrome kicked in, you can always go back into thoughts to think of the best speech ever you gave in the past, where you received standing ovations, where you achieved your goals, where everything went well and audiences were clapping for you. They were so happy you met their needs and expectations. So challenge your doubts. Another way we can manage our imposter syndrome is also by being authentic. You see, when you speak with your authentic voice, authentic mind, and that authentic body languages that you are using, the real you, not another version of someone else, not a copy of another person, you really feel, you have that sense of ownership. You feel confident and you feel like you are in control. So at the end of the day, imposter syndrome will remain very minimal. Just try that next time when you speak. Then you'll see how imposter syndrome will be under control. Another way of managing imposter syndrome is to use imposter syndrome to your advantage. You see, there was a time I was given a speech on a particular topic which I was not much knowledgeable about. Then, as you know very well, when we are anxious, we tend to work harder more than ever. So this has pushed me to work harder. I had to do research. I had to speak to people who are knowledgeable in this topic. I had to read all the books, search the internet, and all that I could do about this topic. And then when I went to speak, I spoke so well, just like I'm an expert in that specific topic. So that is very important. Sometimes just use imposter syndrome to your advantage, and it will help you in the process. You might learn new skills, learn new tactics. You end up having more influence on your audience because they will look at you as an expert and an achiever. Now that you know the best strategies to manage your imposter syndrome, here is a very simple fact that when it comes to public speaking, it's impossible to know everything about a specific topic. Why? Because there's so much information, data, statistics, debates, theories, and you name it out there. It's impossible for us to keep or to retain a lot of such information in our human head. However, another fact which is most important is that you have a wealthy of valuable content and expertise to share, although you might not know what it is just yet. One thing you need to know is that people are not going to praise you or giving you awards for things that you don't know, or for things that you know but you kept them locked up in your head. You have to choose one. It's either you come out, sprout out of your shells and speak, or keep quiet and it's nothing. It doesn't make any difference. So which one are you choosing? I'm sure you choose sprouting out of your shells and speak your mind, share your expertise, change lives, impact people, transform lives, and so on. Because the fact is, you are brimming with a lot of information that others are needing. Others want to change their lives based on the information that you are keeping locked up in your head. The best way to get this information to the people is to download it from your head and speak. Give it to the people who need it the most. You need to gather your confidence and speak about what you know. The bottom line is that imposter syndrome is a common experience that can be managed with practice, determination, and effort because it doesn't go away completely. One more thing you need to know is that if you are experiencing imposter syndrome much often, you have a high degree of success in you, which you are actually attributing to luck. It's not luck. You are not lucky. You are actually successful. Believe me, that is just fear of height to fall from you are experiencing. You need to understand this and move on with your speaking career or learning. You just need to have a strong self-awareness, practice positive self-talks, and seek support from others, which will help you to address it effectively. And above anything else, you need to plan, prepare, and practice your talks well in advance. Then everything will go well with your speeches. Having said all that, I just want my personal story to be your inspiration. I've done a lot of presentation and public speaking at different platforms, big or small. And you probably think that I always enter the stage with confidence that I will deliver a solid and engaging speaking or presentation. You are wrong. I'm an imposter when it comes to public speaking. I'm so self-sabotaging. And I know I'm not alone though. But each time I accept speaking engagement, I always feel or think that other speakers can deliver this talk more eloquently than myself. I feel like a fraud. And I know a lot of other speakers are just like that, because that is just imposter syndrome for you. It's an inescapable bullet. It's a trap, and we need to recognize that trap. We need to know that at some point in time, we just have to come in front of the people and speak. So it's a trap. We need to recognize it, accept it, and do the needful just to know how to manage it. I have so many thoughts, feelings, and all sort of self-sabotaging behaviors when I'm speaking. But none of this stops me from speaking. And it shouldn't stop you either, because you will get so much out of being brave enough to speak or to tell your story right in front of a large or small audience. Eventually, people will open up to you. They will share their experiences and their own stories. In the end, you will help a lot of people. You will inspire a lot of people, make new friendships, make new connections. You will meet a lot of new people in the process. So that is just how beautiful and important public speaking is, despite imposter syndrome. So next time when you are speaking and you feel like an imposter, try instead to change that feeling into gratitude. Think about what you have achieved so far in life and be grateful about it. So stop self-sabotaging and just speak. Gather your courage, confidence, your boldness, and just speak. You will get it right over time. You will be better as time goes. Rome was not built in one day. I'm sure you have heard of this say before. Rome was not built in one day. It was a lot of planning, thinking, preparations, a lot of resources, courage, enthusiasm, hard work, and eventually it was built. As we see it today, it's such a beautiful city. It's really a city where everyone would want to be. That's just how it is to be determined, disciplined, and to have that desire to do something. It will be the same with your public speaking skills development. It will not just take a day. It will not just be today or tomorrow. It might take time. It might take all the sleepless night, all the headaches, all the stomach ache, but eventually you will get it right with determination, with dedication, discipline, and the right decisions that you are going to make. You will become an effective and best public speaker you could be. That is my belief, my opinion, and my perspective. I believe that each and every speaking person is a public speaker, because public speaking can be learned. I will talk more about learning public speaking in the lessons to come. All the best for the next lessons.